are on the air.
Can we get a,
Go ahead and move forward. Mics are on, everything's going.
can we get a screen?
The screen's not on yet.
Screens up. I want to get to the, where's the one with the agenda? Oh, put your agenda up. There we go. Okay, good to go.
Okay, I call to order the meeting of the Planning Commission, February 15th. If everyone will please join me in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Engel,
Here.
Sarkozy,
Here.
Castellanos,
Here.
Vice Chair Stroman,
Here.
Chair Willis.
Here. Any of you with cell phones, pagers, similar devices that need to be set on silent or vibrate mode unless you're on duty as an emergency responder? We've got some of you here in the chambers. We've got some zooming in on us. We will start with the consent calendar, approval of the minutes from the meeting of December 14th.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 14th, 2021.
Is there a second? Or are there questions or corrections?
I will second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passed unanimously. We've got one item in our public hearing. We're going to consider an application for a site and architecture review. The applicant is requesting approval to construct a single-story affordable senior housing project consisting of 12 fourplexes on 2 adjacent parcels, a 1,000 square foot community center, laundry facility, and community garden areas. The project also includes site development with grading, water, sewer, and storm connections to city services, installation of parking spaces, 60, landscaping, and street frontage improvements. Before I ask for the staff report with the number of people I see here tonight, we do have a rule of a 5-minute time limit, so I'm going to stick to that rule to make sure that everybody gets heard and on this issue.
And Madam Chair, if I may, now would be the time, if there are any commissioners that have any conflicts, now would be the time to announce them and recuse themselves if necessary. And now would also be the time to report any significant ex parte communications, if anybody has any.
We have none. So a staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Willis. Before you tonight, Planning Commissioners, is a proposed housing project at the corner of Irwin Avenue and California Street. This is 1310 Irwin and 706 California. The zoning of these two parcels is R2 with a general plan designation of medium density residential. Surrounding uses of these properties to the north are railroad tracks, Highway 120, and across Highway 120, zoning C2 and M1, and that's in the Liberty Business Park. East, south, and west are all R1, single-family residential, as well as a church. The proposed project would develop 2 currently vacant infill lots. 1310 Irwin Avenue, this is commonly referred to in Escalon as the former Escalon Livestock Auction Yard, or just the old auction yard. During the 1990s, the auction yard relocated, removed all their associated structures, and has remained vacant since. 706 California Street contains a single-family dwelling unit. It was built around 1930. The dwelling unit in its current condition is uninhabitable, and it and the remaining garage will be removed as part of the project. Overview of the project. This development requires site and architecture approval from the Planning Commission. And the purpose of site and architecture, it's intended to protect the integrity and character of the residential areas of the city and allow the city an opportunity to review detailed site plans. purpose of site and architecture approval is to regulate height, width, shape, proportion, exterior construction, design elements of the building, to make sure they're architecturally compatible with their surroundings. Escalon Municipal Code says all new residential projects on sites larger than 1 acre are also required to have a planned development zoning district. Plan developments are reviewed by Planning Commission, who makes a recommendation to the City Council for adoption. However, based on Government Code Section 65913.4D1, as well as 17.24060 of the Municipal Code, multifamily housing, housings affordable to lower or moderate income households are exempt from the requirement. So this project does not require a plan development, site and architecture only. That remains at Planning Commission. This housing project will serve low and very low income seniors with incomes no higher than 50% of the San Joaquin County median income. Rental assistance will come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Housing Choice project-based voucher program provided by the Housing Authority of San Joaquin County. This project proposes to construct 12 fourplexes on 2 adjacent parcels totaling 3.17 acres. 47 of those units would be available to senior households, 62 and over. 1 unit is set aside for an on-site manager. Of these total units, 44 will be 1-bedroom, 1-bath units, approximately 500 square feet in size, and the remaining 4 units, as well as the manager's unit, would have 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, approximately 700 square feet. All of the buildings will be 1 story in height, and they will include open space for barbecue grill area, gathering locations, additional spaces for other outdoor uses. All of the units will incorporate universal design elements, such as no-step entries, minimum 34-inch doorways, passageways, accessible bathrooms with grab bars, larger hallway widths, levered door handles, and faucets. In addition, 5% of the units will be fully accessible and all adaptable for ADA accessibility. The project proposes a community building. It'll have office space, computers for resident use, and a multi-purpose room for events and classes, as well as a patio area. The project includes a laundry facility, bocce ball courts, landscaping, bicycle parking, a covered bus stop. 8-foot masonry wall is going to be constructed along the northern boundary to act as a noise barrier from Highway 120, as well as railroad traffic. The main access to the project site will be off Irwin Avenue, secondary access off California Street. The project provides 60 parking spaces. The project will connect to city water, sewer, and storm drain services. Access to Rosina Street will be restricted for emergency vehicles only by way of a gate with a Knox box. Anticipated project construction is going to happen in 3 phases. First phase is site preparation. Second phase is construction of the buildings. Third phase is installation of the parking areas, sidewalks, driveways, and landscaping. Estimated construction start would be around March 2024, completion September 2025, with anticipated all units to be leased by December 2025. The project owner recently completed a similar project in Manteca, which is already 100% occupied and has a waiting list. Analysis of the project to the Escalon Municipal Code. So prior to issuance of site and architecture approval, Planning Commission has to determine that the application complies with the following findings. The findings are in bold, staff notes are not bold. So the first finding, that the use or activity is an allowed use within the zoning district of the project site. As I mentioned, the site is zoned R2, medium density residential. It allows up to 15 units an acre. It's 3.17 acre site, so it would allow 48 units, which the applicants have proposed. Finding B, site plans consistent with provisions set forth in this chapter, the Escalon General Plan, and other plans and policies adopted by City Council. The next sections will go through those documents. So the Escalon Municipal Code, the site plan is consistent with the zoning code, with the exception of section 17.15050 for secured storage. That section of the code requires that each unit have a protected storage area 8 feet wide, 5 feet deep. This was not included in the site plan. The applicants have requested a concession on this requirement. And so a concession, Government Code Section 65915D, states that the local government shall grant concessions to a developer of a housing development constructing housing for senior, low, very low income households. And this project does meet the senior and low income requirements. So according to Government Code 65915, the developer could request up to 2 concessions, and they've requested their concession be the removal of the secured storage requirement.
Excuse me for 1 second. There are 2 other chairs up here, if you who is standing would like to sit down? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. The applicants have found through other similar projects that they have done that the secured storage is not a necessity to the residents. And based on their open floor plan layout, the storage unit attached to the building would block the natural light coming into the units. Staff finds the requested concession reasonable. It's not contrary to state or federal law and would not have a specific adverse impact on public health and safety. Other aspects of the zoning code are met. The density is appropriately calculated. 26% coverage of the lot. The project proposes 26% coverage of the lot, which is below the 65% maximum. The project requires 9,600 square feet of open space, and the applicants provide 26,000 square feet. There's 60 required parking spaces, and they provide all of them. And they also provide the bicycle parking to meet the municipal code. Another document adopted by the city is the Escalon General Plan, and the Irwin Village project is consistent with the goals and policies of this plan, including, these are all coming out of Chapter 7, provide a variety of housing densities, types, sizes, costs, and locations, promote high-quality building and site design for multifamily developments, encourage distribution of low and moderate income housing through the community, encourage development of housing for seniors, promote medium-density residential development consisting of 4-plex developments for infill. Moving on to page 6. Another city document is the Escalon housing element, and the Irwin Village project is consistent with the goals and policies of the housing element, including encourage additional housing to meet the city's regional housing need allocation, or ARENA numbers, by encouraging and assisting the construction of multifamily housing, promoting a range of housing type. City shall encourage new rental housing projects to provide extremely low, very low, and low-income units. Continue to provide incentives that promote development of affordable housing, development of vacant residential land. City shall encourage and facilitate housing types and programs for seniors, and continue to provide incentives that allow eligible senior projects to receive up to 2 incentives. Escalon was assigned 425 housing units in the San Joaquin Council of Governments Regional Housing Needs Plan. 60 are identified for low-income households, 43 for very low, 66 for low. And Irwin Village will provide 47 units of low, very low, extremely low income senior housing, which will assist in meeting the city's regional housing needs. The next finding to approve site and architecture applications, it has to do with building architecture. This is making sure that the buildings have architectural variety, generous use of building materials, colors, textures, that they have a unified theme. And in review of the plan, staff finds that the proposed buildings have architectural variety, they're compatible with the character of buildings on nearby properties, and they include scale, bulk, design features, building materials, colors, and textures. The next finding, finding D, has to do with site design. There are a list of required features for site design. You can see they're number 1 through 17. City of Escalon Engineering Department, Planning Department, as well as the Fire Department have reviewed the site plan and finds that the site design as conditioned with conditions of approval meets the findings required above and is consistent with the general plan and other regulations adopted by the city. Escalon has a growth management ordinance that limits the number of housing permits issued in a year. Irwin Village is subject to the growth management ordinance. City issues 75 permits a year. There are 48 units, but the growth management ordinance allows that affordable housing only requires one allocation for every 2 affordable units, and therefore the applicants will have to apply for an allocation during one of the 2 allocation periods, and they'll need 25 allocations to cover the 48 units. Environmental, the proposed project is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, abbreviated CEQA, and City of Escalon is the lead agency for the project. Base Camp Environmental Incorporated is the consultant for the applicant, and they prepared a CEQA initial study concluding that the project would not have significant environmental effects if all recommended mitigation measures were incorporated in the project. After staff's review of the initial study, staff agreed that the city could adopt a negative declaration, made the document available for public review 20 days from January 24 to February 14th. The document was placed on the city website, notice was published in the Escalon Times, and a notice of intent to adopt the negative declaration was provided by email to a range of agencies and organizations. Since the 20-day review period closed yesterday, after the Planning Commission agenda was posted, some additional concerns have come into the city since that time. So I'm going to go ahead and read into the record the comments that the city has received. There was a stapled packet available next to the agendas. So the first one coming from Escalon Police Chief Robert Lackey says, I did not find any links to leave a comment on attached to the email. I do have several questions. 1, I know that the area of California and Irwin has limited sidewalks. Does the plan include improvements to the street and right-of-ways? 2, Irwin is a fairly narrow street. Any increase in traffic will impact it. Will it be widened? 3, the intersection of Irwin and Highway 120 poses traffic hazards as cross-traffic on Highway 120 does not stop. Traffic on Highway 120 is generally heavy at specific times of day, increases on Fridays and Sundays. Traffic backs up in this area because of the BNSF crossing at Highway 120 just west of McHenry. What will be done for overflow traffic on Irwin as it mixes with increased traffic due to increase of residents? In addition, what would be the plan for the UP crossing at Irwin and Highway 120? 4, I have prior knowledge that the land in question has been a stockyard. Because of this, a well, number 6, in the area had to be shut down and isolated due to high nitrates. Will excavation and trenching disturb the soil and possibly impact the nitrate plumb in the water table? 5, it would be apparent that Caltrans would conduct a traffic study of Highway 120 in the area. Will studies be done for Irwin to First Street, California Street to McHenry Avenue, as these intersections are the only other routes to exit the west side neighborhoods towards downtown? Again, there will be an increase of traffic that will impact California Street and First Street. Second comment letter received came in from a William Smith. It says, Dear Mayor Ed Alves and the interim city manager Dominique Romo, I'm writing this formal letter to express my concerns with the construction of 44 low-income housing units on Irwin Street in Escalon. The following concerns are listed below. Need traffic study due to intersection at Irwin and 120 with more vehicles going to 120 on Irwin due to new housing. This needs to be addressed. Well water was found to be contaminated within that lot, which means the soil may be contaminated. The current house on the lot is a historic relic and needs to be treated as documented history in Escalon with protection from being torn down. Public needs a chance to be heard when major construction projects are being developed and not forced on residents with short notice. What is the radius of being notified? Because I live within 3 blocks. I have lived in Escalon for more than 20 years, raised 4 kids, and love this community. I've helped the city council with contract negotiations with Jilton in the past without any fee because I care. I've run for city council unsuccessfully twice and will continue to serve this great community in any way that's needed. As a resident, I feel the concerns stated in this letter need to be addressed before any final decision to continue the project is decided. Thank you for your consideration, and I will wait for your response. Sincerely, William Smith. Next letter was received from Cody Fowler. To whom it may concern, I would like to comment regarding the Site and Architecture Application 21759, the senior living proposal at the corner of State Highway 120 and Irwin Avenue. First off, I was appalled to see the notice the city mailed out to residents in the area of the proposed project. Your notice failed to provide one of the largest details in the application. The application is asking for approval for Section 8 housing, a detail that likely should have been mentioned up front in your notice. I find it appalling that the city is taking lessons from the state of California in withholding information in an effort to mislead the public. On page 1 of the agenda, item 2 document, one of the applicants is the Housing Authority, County of San Joaquin. On page 3 of the agenda, item 2, it is clearly outlined that the project will serve low and very low income seniors with incomes no higher than 50% of the San Joaquin County median income. This represents Section 8 housing. In addition, the agenda item 2 clearly states the project will provide rental assistance for all its residents through rental subsidies from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Housing Choice Project-Based Voucher Program. When searching for information on Housing Choice Project-Based Voucher, BPV, it is certainly evident that the program does not mention seniors at all. In fact, I was not able to locate anything that indicated it was an age-specific program at all. It's a lottery with preference given to current residents in San Joaquin County, not just Escalon. The application gives people the option to select from a list of available housing complexes in various cities throughout San Joaquin County, with most being in Stockton. Who will select Stockton when a nice small town like Escalon makes the list? Additionally, there's information from HUD that the Housing Choice Project-Based Voucher, BPV, program will prioritize those based on special needs. Those special needs are displaced, homeless, and none per the FAQ page on HACSJ's website. In the absence of prioritizing for seniors and the clear priority for homeless people, this is starting to look more like a government-subsidized homeless shelter than senior housing. The process is based on countywide lottery, and because of this, we'll most likely not see placement of Escalon seniors in this housing project. Given the clear prioritization for homeless people and what appears to be no prioritization for seniors, this project is not what is being sold to the residents of Escalon. This project does absolutely nothing for the senior housing issue we have in Escalon. It only serves to provide Section 8 housing for the residents of San Joaquin County, Stockton. I would encourage the Planning Commission and any others with any voting authority to vote no on this project and find a real solution for Escalon senior housing that benefits Escalon. See the HACSJ online website to learn more about the truth. In addition, I have questions I would like answered regarding this project. 1, will there be a limit on the number of occupants per unit? If so, do all occupants need to be over 62 years of age? Will this be monitored? 2, will there be any special assessments or supplemental taxes and/or bonds attached to the property? Signed, Cody Fowler. And the last comment the city received is from Jeremy Johnson. To whom it may concern, I am a resident of Escalon, California, who's very concerned with the Irwin Avenue and 720 California Street project, better known as the Irwin Village Senior Residential Project. This clearly is a low-income housing project not in our citizens' best interest, being presented as if it was something great for our local elderly population, except it isn't guaranteed to help our citizens at all. The short period of time given to our public to respond to the project is very short, and from what I can tell was close to a week or so. The fact it was presented during the week of Super Bowl and Valentine's Day, and the city is trying to get this to Planning Commission before another city council meeting, and more time for public weigh-in is deeply troubling. If true transparency with our people is to happen, then a realistic time frame for the people to read the proposed project packet and present concerns needs to be much longer than the time allotted of a week or two. There are multiple EIR concerns needing to be addressed regarding policing and traffic by our police station. There is a potential nitrogen waste issue as the land proposed to be used for housing dairy cattle for a very long time in previous history. The house on the land built in the 1930s, as far as I know, might be historic and needs to be looked at closer. The other concern is the project is for low-income seniors, yet there's no number of these units set aside for our own people to live in, as far as I can tell. So here's a project which could potentially disrupt our city in a major way, and our citizens aren't even guaranteed to have first options to live there. So basically, there is a lottery for other cities' residents to be placed in our town, even though they may not agree with our town's ideology or deserve to live here more than our own constituents. This government overstepping is abusing the relationship between local government and its people, and is definitely not looking out for its local population's right to have oversight. This is an egregious overstep and would appear superficially like big government coordinating with our local government behind the backs of its people to install a living environment which may be very detrimental to the local residents. This is unacceptable and isn't in the best interest of Escalon. Sincerely, Jeremy Johnson. Okay, so those are the comments that came in after the agenda was posted. The environmental review found that there is no substantial evidence that the project with mitigation measures will have a significant effect on the environment. The applicant has agreed to the mitigation measures, and these measures are included in a mitigation, monitoring, and reporting plan, also known as an MMRP, which is before the Planning Commission for adoption. Before adopting the initial study, mitigated net declaration, and mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, Planning Commission must find that it utilized its own independent judgment in review of the document, considered any comments received during the public review period. The required mitigation measures included in the MMRP will mitigate or avoid significant impacts to the environment. Fiscal impact, the project will pay development impact fees as adopted by the City Council. And in conclusion, a consolidated list of conditions of approval have been drafted to ensure the site is developed in conformance with the general plan and zoning policies and regulations. The site can adequately be served by utilities and public services, and staff finds that as conditioned, the proposed project is consistent with city codes and requirements. Public outreach. On January 28th, a notice of public hearing was mailed to every property owner and occupant within 300 feet of the site. At the time of agenda publication, staff received 2 public inquiries on the project. Both were to gain information on how to lease a unit and to have the affordability requirements explained. Other concerns that have been shared related to findings in the environmental documents regarding traffic congestion, stacking of vehicles on Irwin Avenue as they turn onto 120. These concerns have been shared with the applicant as well as Caltrans. Caltrans has indicated that they're performing the necessary analysis at the intersection, and they'll report back to the city. I already shared the other written documents that we received. I read them just a few minutes ago. The public hearing notice also appeared in the Escalon Times on February 2nd. Planning Commission's decision tonight begins a 10 business day appeal period, during which the Commission's action may be appealed to the City Council or called up to Council by a council member, and that appeal period expires at 5 p.m. March 2nd. Recommendation, staff's recommendation is that Planning Commission conduct the public hearing and approve the site and architecture application subject to the conditions of approval for the Irwin Village project based on the findings and environmental determinations contained in the staff report. Adopt the initial study, mitigated negative declaration, and mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, and direct staff to file a notice of determination with the San Joaquin County Recorder's Office. Procedures moving forward. Planning Commission should open the public hearing and take public testimony on the project, close the public hearing. If Planning Commission determines to approve the application, they have to make the findings for site and architecture approval, approve the application, subject to the conditions of approval as proposed or modified by Planning Commission, adopt the initial study, MND and MMRP, and direct staff to file a CEQA notice of determination with the San Joaquin County Recorder's Office. Next, we have the proposed list of conditions for the project. Specific conditions: this approval would run with the land. It's binding on subsequent owners. South San Joaquin Irrigation District responded to the project that if there's any private irrigation facilities, they'll have to disconnect from the district's irrigation network. And if there's any drainage from the site that discharges into district facilities, San Joaquin County Irrigation District wants to review those improvement plans. San Joaquin County Multi-Species Habitat Conservation and Open Space Plan responded. The project is subject to SJM SCP, and they recommend that the project applicant contact them as early as possible to go through the process. Caltrans did provide a response, which is in the exhibits, but they are also continuing to work on that intersection analysis. So there is a condition of approval that, subject to Caltrans determination, the applicant will be required to meet any additional requirements provided in the intersection analysis under review at Caltrans. Engineering had several site design comments. If you have any questions on those, feel free to ask. Fire Department accepts the 36-foot fire turnaround in the project on the condition that no shrubs, trees, or other obstructions are placed or planted within 5 feet behind the curb. Fire Department is requiring a rollover curb installed around the turnaround, and that the curb needs to be painted red, no parking. The rest are standard conditions of approval. If you have any questions on those, feel free to ask. Then we have all the exhibits. That concludes the staff report. If you have any questions for staff, we are available. We also have several of the applicants here in the audience or on the line. So DFA Development, those are the owners of the project. So if you have any questions about property management or on-site operations, they would be directed towards them. Housing Authority for County of San Joaquin is here. So if you have any questions on the Housing Authority's involvement or rental assistance with the project, they are here to answer questions. Charlie with Base Camp Environmental is here. Their company did the initial study, mitigated negative declaration, and the MMRP. So if you have any questions on the environmental documents or any concerns, environmental concerns like for traffic, they're here to answer those. And then we also have Charlie and Lars from Artifacts West. Those are the architects. If you have any questions about site design, building code questions, they are here also to answer those questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Before we open the public hearing, do the commissioners have any questions of staff?
I just have one. Under engineering number 6, an 8-foot masonry wall is required along the railroad tracks. Why is this only along the railroad tracks? Why not on the adjacent properties as well?
The only time we require the masonry wall between the two zones is when you have commercial abutting residential. These are both residential zones, R2 to R1, but it's both residential, so the code does not require a masonry wall, but it is required between the tracks and the highway and the development.
So is there an existing fence on the other sides of the property?
Individual residences have fences.
Okay.
Now, mention was made of the single-family residence, an outbuilding, and then concrete slabs. Is the pump house, it's not included in one of the buildings to be torn down?
If you look at the site pictures, is there an overhead view?
That little building right in the middle.
I don't know if we can zoom in on that. It's a little blurry. So over here, there's some cement slabs.
But where the pump house is?
What about it?
Well, it only mentions the single-family residence and the outbuilding, the garage, I'm assuming. So,
The site will be cleared.
I'm assuming we haven't received any response from Caltrans yet.
On the traffic analysis for the intersection, not yet. They were doing the traffic counts this week, and then they were going to do their analysis and get back to us.
So over the last few weeks, we have received additional concerns from members of the public, and so staff did reach out to the Base Camp Environmental, Charlie, regarding the traffic concerns and questions. And so they did provide answers, which they are here today to also discuss if anybody has additional questions. And so is traffic, one of the questions that came up is traffic generation for affordable housing less than that for conventional single-family housing, was one of the questions that we had posed to them. The response is that it is well documented that multifamily housing projects, and in particular affordable multifamily projects, generate less traffic than market rate single-family residential development. As indicated by the information below, affordable multifamily projects can be expected to generate about half the traffic than a conventional single-family residential project does. Senior affordable projects can be expected to generate even less traffic. The Institute for Transportation Engineering, ITE, is the accepted source for traffic engineering and trip generation analysis. In the latest edition of ITE, trip generation estimates trip generation rates for market rate multifamily units. That is, the number of trips produced per multifamily housing unit per day is less than 75% of the rate for single-family units. The proposed housing in Irwin Village is for lower-income senior citizens. It has been established by the ITE that trip generation rates for developments oriented to seniors are substantially lower than for market rate multifamily developments. The trip generation rate used for the Cal EE MOD run is that of a retirement community, which is similar to the development proposed in this project. A 2018 Caltrans study of trip generation from multifamily affordable housing units specifically found that low-income households living in multifamily housing own fewer vehicles, make fewer motorized vehicle trips, and generate fewer vehicle miles traveled than their similarly situated higher-income counterparts. Residents of affordable housing used walking and transit for nearly half of the trips generated in the morning and evening peak hours. Lower-income households generate 47% less vehicle miles traveled than their wealthier counterparts, as it may be more challenging to realize larger reductions. Affordable housing sites generate 35% fewer motorized vehicle trips in the PM peak hour on average than would be predicted using ITE data. There was little difference in the AM peak, however. In addition, as noted in the initial study, Mitigated Negative Deck, OPR's technical advisory on evaluating transportation impacts using VMT stated, a project that has an affordable housing component is expected to have minimal effect on the VMT and therefore on traffic. Specifically, the technical advisory states, adding affordable housing to infill locations generally improves job housing match, in turn shortening commutes and reducing VMT. Further, quote, low-wage workers in particular would be more likely to choose a residential location close to their workplace if one is available, end quote. In areas where existing job housing match is closer to optimal, low-income housing nevertheless generates less VMT than the market rate housing. Therefore, a project consisting of a high percentage of affordable housing may be a basis for the lead agency to find a less than significant impact on VMT. Evidence supports a presumption of less than significant impact for a 100% affordable residential development or the residential component of a mixed-use development in infill locations. Affordable housing is not a land use that can be selected in the Cal EE Mod air quality model. The trip generation estimate of 115 trips per day in the CEQA initial study was drawn from this source. ITE rates for quote affordable housing are just below 5 vehicles per unit per day, which is about 33% less than the trip generation for market rate multifamily development. The next question was, will project traffic cause significant effects at nearby intersections? No. To provide a point of comparison, market rate multifamily development of the site could result in an estimated 343 trips per day, approximately 3 times the traffic generation figure used in the initial study. Even at this rate, the project would not produce significant traffic during peak hours. Traffic engineers typically estimate peak hour trip generation at about 10% of the daily trip rate, which would translate to about 35 trips during the AM or peak hour. The peak hour trip generation rate is so low that most cities with established traffic impact analysis study guidelines would not require a traffic study. In Stockton and San Joaquin County, the traffic study requirement is not imposed until peak hour traffic exceeds 100 vehicles per hour. The project would produce no more than 35% of that amount. If all of the project traffic were directed to a single intersection during the busiest hour, project-generated vehicles would pass through the intersection every 105 seconds, or about 1 minute and 45 seconds on average, which would not contribute substantially to any congestion that may now exist. Of course, the project peak hour would not use only one intersection, but would instead be distributed east to McHenry Avenue, west to Irwin, Walnut, or Brennan, or south to other destinations.
Excuse me, Dominique. There's another chair up here if you'd like to sit down.
The next question was, will the project exacerbate safety concerns at the railroad crossing and State Route 120 intersections? Given the low project traffic generation discussed above, there should be no safety concerns at the railroad crossings. The project will not contribute significant amounts of new traffic to the existing crossings of the railroad and existing intersections with State Route 120. The traffic generated by the project's 47 units will be commingled with traffic generated by more than 800 existing, largely single-family residences located west of McHenry and south of the railroad. According to Escalon planning data, the Union Pacific, formerly Tidewater Southern line, is a relatively low traffic line supporting 2 train trips per weekday, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Each of the State Route 120 intersections are equipped with full at-grade crossing safety devices, which include warning signs and pavement markings 300 feet south of the crossing, and at the crossing, flashing lights, warning bells, and cross-arm barriers. The conclusion is that the above represents Base Camp Environmental's best professional understanding of traffic generation and safety conditions at the existing State Route 120 railroad crossings. And then, of course, if we have additional questions or information wanted on these responses, Charlie is in the audience and can provide additional feedback.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff based on what we've had so far? Okay, at this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Normally, we listen to applicants first to give their summary of what the application consists of, and then after, proponents, opponents, and again, like I said, I'd limit you to 5 minutes because we've got quite a crowd here tonight. And at some point, I'm going to authorize or call for a bathroom break because we might be here for quite some time. So if anyone would like to get up and talk on the project, step up to the podium. It's not mandatory that you give your name and address. but we like to have that for the accuracy of the minutes and in case there's some follow-up that we need to get back to you about. Did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to clarify. So it's the applicant to speak first?
I'm sorry?
The applicant's going to speak first?
Is this the applicant? No. Let's have the applicant talk first, and then we can,
I'll be brief. And again, good evening, everybody. Peter Ragsdale, Executive Director for the Housing Authority, County of Santa Cruz, and Delta Community Developers Corporation. You know, it's an honest conversation about affordable housing in California. I don't know. I can't speak intelligently about traffic in Escalon. I can't speak intelligently about the age of the house that's on the property. You know, I live and work in this community, in this county, and I believe housing is in crisis. I believe that there is a need for affordable senior around this county. Our footprint is countywide. We're working on projects in multiple communities, Lodi, Tracy, Stockton, and Manteca. We're proud of the work we've done with DFA Development. This is our third collaboration. And, you know, if you look at the housing element, this didn't happen in a vacuum. People know, and to the extent that people know seniors in this community that need this housing. So I would say that one thing I can tackle, if people have questions about the affordable housing finance, that is what I do know about. And one of the things that makes this project possible is to serve people that need that rental assistance. It is financeable, and it brings permanent debt to this project. And people that put their checkbook behind a mortgage, this project will have a mortgage of over $5 million, at which point owners and operators make those guarantees to make sure that there is occupied units, we follow the letter of the law, and that there is service to seniors in this community. So with that, I know there's lots of people that would like to speak, and thank you for your time.
Sir, can I ask a couple questions? So it appears there's some questions as far as in the eyes of the county. What is considered senior?
62 and over.
Okay, so if this is presented as a senior development, is there any sort of, we want to make sure that, you know, different folks, that it truly stays senior. So is there a time frame for how long?
55-year affordability. It's deed restricted for the lifetime of the project.
Okay. Had another question. So 62 and older is considered senior.
Correct.
And then the timeline is 55 years.
That's correct. I mean, and just to take 2 seconds and explain how affordable housing is built largely in America, and especially in California, is funding that comes from the federal government through low-income housing tax credits that flows through the state of California. These are highly competitive dollars. There's $15 million of tax credit equity in this project, which means corporations that have federal tax liability put these dollars, time value of money. They pay their taxes early, they invest in affordable housing, and they get a return on their upfront money in paying their federal tax liability. So long story short, I included a little diagram in the handout. But $15 million of this project comes from private equity. These are corporations that pay federal income tax, that flow and are competitive in California. So there are banks, there are lenders, there are 1 million people that walk through the maintenance of this project, including private owners, to say that it is operated according to the rules, it is operated because it has to last that 55-year affordability period. So you know, we're incredibly proud of the project in Manteca, and I think we included that in our diagram as a comp because the architects that are here with me this evening did that design as well. So I'd encourage people to take a look at Cottage Village, but the reality is that it's a beautiful project, it is an amenity to the community, and it serves seniors that live on Social Security, and that is the bulk of people that in terms of the amount of income that they get in the community is largely based on Social Security. So I can't, you know, I'm familiar with the Escalon housing element, and I'm familiar with the RENA numbers as COG is just released. I think it's interesting for the folks in the room that the preceding 10 years San Joaquin County should have grown about 43,000 housing units. Needless to say, we didn't meet that. For the prospective 8 years, meaning 8 years going forward, they increased the number to 50,000. So we're in this weird situation. We have Bay Area pressures, we have rents rising, we have a lack of multifamily production, and we have high-end single-family development that presses a lot of people out of housing. So we have rising rents, we have insufficient production, and this is a highly competitive financing situation to build affordable housing. The Housing Authority, with partners, is closing an affordable housing property in Stockton that we've worked on for a period of time. I included our Veterans Project, which is the first time the County of San Joaquin has put land that the county owns into affordable housing project for homeless vets. And I don't think anyone would argue that people that serve this country and are struggling with housing insecurity, deserve a place. And for folks that drive down I-5 and you see the new community benefit outpatient clinic next to the San Joaquin County Hospital, we're co-locating veterans housing with medical care. So I would just want to leave people that understand, and I understand the challenges of building in California and the concern about what's to be built, who it's to be built for. You have people in good conscience on the development team that want to help meet the housing need in Escalon, and I am certain that we could make a college try to answer questions tonight that come up.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay?
You just said something very poignant. You want to try to meet the senior housing need in Escalon. We recognize that, this has nothing to do for site and architecture, but, and I know that we can't require it, but is there any way that Escalon residents, senior Escalon residents can have first priority in this new development?
So you have a city attorney, so I'm going to pose this question to the group that we have fair housing laws.
Okay.
So we don't need it. Well, so I can only say this. You asked me an honest question. I want
Yes.
to give you an honest answer, which is to say, we could say anything, but I'm saying to you, we have to be representative of what the state and the feds require us to do when we build affordable housing. Here's what I would do to answer your question in practical terms.
Yes.
You want to advertise an affordable housing property? When the waiting list opens, and it is a site-based waiting list, to say it's for this project only, and advertise it, set up 10 laptops in City Hall to make sure that the day that waiting list opens, you have everybody here that needs an apartment. That's one way to make sure that people are served knowledge, information. So
Okay.
that would be my answer.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mr. Ragsdale?
I'm trying to get away too. So I can't tell you this. Again, I just want to tell you that, again, we are acutely aware of the concerns, and but we're trying to do this collaboratively.
Okay.
I have a question.
So the Housing Authority is the agency that monitors who occupies those units?
We are one of the entities that do that, yes.
So who's the top dog that monitors who goes in there?
So the state of California, the Housing Authority, and the federal government all look at the occupancy of these units.
Okay.
Excuse me. Excuse me, sir.
Second question I have.
1 second, Steve. I just have a request of the audience members. Can we please try to keep this as professional and treat each other with respect? We don't need the talking underneath the breath. We're up here as your planning commissioners trying to make an educated decision, and we ask you to please give the speaker at the podium the proper respect. You will get your turn. Please just wait. Sorry.
So the second question is, who monitors how many people are in those units?
So there's a professional private company that manages these properties, at which point there's a requirement, there is an occupancy standard for each apartment that must be met. Everyone who lives here signs a lease, just like any other apartment complex, at which point, if people break the rules, they lose their housing.
Okay. Third and final question. I'm 78 years old. I'm living in that unit. I'm living by myself in the single bedroom unit. I get really ill, I have to have my 45-year-old daughter or son, can they come and live with me?
So they have to be added to the lease. The reality is there has to be a specific circumstances that's allowable. And in many cases, when we are intentionally building one-bedroom apartments, because those are really the need that most, again, affordable seniors, that's the demand we see is not multi-bedroom senior housing, but single bedroom. So I would make the same argument that if that 45-year-old child could do the reverse, and they have to be income eligible, the household together, has to be income eligible. What's the likelihood that there's a 45-year-old son or daughter that would income qualify? So what I see in my 30 years of doing this is that, again, it's not assisted living, it's affordable housing. So people at that point, when they need those types of interventions, move on.
I should know this answer. I'm sorry, one more question. My apologies, I should know this, but how many units or how many of the buildings are one bedroom and how many are two bedroom?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are they all one bedrooms? Four two bedrooms, sorry, because Cottage Village is 8, so 4 two bedrooms.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Ragsdale.
Thank you.
Is there another applicant to address this issue, or should we go to proponents or opponents? Anyone who'd like to speak? Should I do the first row first and then go on to the second?
We have an applicant on the virtual meeting.
Okay, wait 1 second, sir. We have somebody on the Zoom meeting. Wait 1 second. You can stay there. He's getting his exercise. Who is,
Chris Flaherty, he's with DFA Development, one of the owners of the property.
okay, Chris, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, everyone, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And I wanted to kind of bring a different light and echo what Peter is saying. I mean, on the Fair Housing Act side, we have to be very careful, but we can market to local residences. And we can do that in creative ways, but they all have to meet the litmus test of meeting the Fair Housing Act. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to go on. And I also wanted to share one thing, bringing a personal touch to these projects. And Peter addressed this, is, the personal guarantees that we sign, are real. And there's a lot of debt sitting on these. And I take myself personally and our family, because it's a family company, we take those guarantees very seriously. So we're going to make sure that these projects are built correctly, well done, as you can see on our Cottage Village project, and that the tenants are the correct tenants. One thing that Peter didn't go further down the chain is the management company interviews the tenants after they've met the threshold requirement of income. They have to have a clean criminal record. They have to have adequate credit. And then once they've met that threshold, then we interview them, the management company does. And at that moment in time, they're placed, based on the compatibility of the whole system. So with that, you'll see myself, occasionally when I'm in town, I'll be there and I'm walking around, and I want the residents to know, that I take an interest in these projects and I care about how it's maintained, because those guarantees are real. And so we can't afford to have challenges. And typically we don't expect a lot of challenges from the senior population. So, I mean, I can look at, we've been doing this a while, and I know that a lot of times when people, look at affordability, Peter said something that's, quite correct. I mean, affordability for seniors is it's real, because Social Security checks only go so far. And when housing is as expensive as it is, it makes it difficult for seniors. And, this project, I think, can do a lot for Escalon and the local residents there. And I just want to let you know that there's real people behind it. Myself, our family business. So, we make those guarantees and we take them seriously. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Mr. Flaherty?
So I have a couple comments. Chris, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned you could do everything you could to market to Escalon residents. Well, marketing for Escalon residents does not make them a priority, so that's a concern. The other thing is, I'm not an expert on government contracts, but I would think that this type of development is going to be very financially beneficial. I don't see it, it's government backed. I'm sure it'll look good, but just a comment. Don't know where I'm going with that.
So if I may, and I just want to understand when you say government backed, if you can help me understand, what does that mean? Because I'm personally providing the backing, right? Not the federal government. So I want to make sure we're clear on that.
I also have a question for Chris.
Who's speaking, please?
It's a member of the public. She's not able to.
My name is Joanne.
Joanna, I'm sorry, this is the city attorney. You can't ask questions at this time. You can during public comment. Once the public hearing's open, you could jump in and then ask your questions.
Apology. Thank you.
Sorry about that. It's just a matter of order.
Did you want to complete your?
Chris, like I said, I'm not an expert on the funding, but I can see the Manteca one looks good, highly successful. Already said that there's a huge waiting list for it already. I would wonder how many Manteca residents are a part of that community. The council, Escalon City Council, and the Planning Commission here have always said that senior housing is a priority for Escalon residents. And I'm just wondering, why is it Escalon's responsibility to solve a larger problem within the county?
So let me share another personal experience on Cottage Village. When I took that project on, and thankfully Peter and the Housing Authority were there, it was a very difficult project to get done. And I had my cell phone listed on the project website. And to this day, I receive at least 2 to 3 phone calls a week from seniors in tears that are getting evicted from their house, from their units, because they can't afford the rent any longer. And it saddens me, I have to tell you, it's very difficult. And even though there's certain instances when I say to myself, man, I made a mistake putting my cell phone on there, but I get to talk to real people. And when they ask me, how do I sign up? And I say, look, we're the owner of the project. Let me point you to the management company, which is a very solid management company. We do a lot of business with them. And I sometimes patch in the management company manager for Cottage Village, and I get on the phone with them and help them through. But it's a real challenge. And so, a lot of the Cottage Village residents were from Manteca. I don't know the percentages exactly, but it's real people in the community. And so those phone calls happen, and they're tough. They're really difficult, especially when we're at maximum occupancy. We have a waiting list that's very deep. So, those are real people out there. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other applicant?
Doesn't seem like it.
I have a question for environmental.
Or staff, or?
No, for environmental base camp.
Mr. Simpson.
Is there somebody here from base camp?
Mr. Simpson
Okay.
is here.
Is he here in the room or on?
Mr. Simpson, there's questions for you if you don't mind coming up.
Evening, I'm Charlie Simpson with Base Camp Environmental. How can I help?
Oh, Charlie. That's a
Anybody
loaded
want to
question.
change places?
So I guess from an environmental standpoint, again, I should probably know this, but I frankly didn't have time to read 663 pages of documents. But given the fact that that site is an old livestock yard, and we heard a concern from the police chief about the high levels of nitrite within the, is it nitrate or nitrite?
I
Because
think it's nitrate.
Nitrates.
okay, so what is the plan? Because honestly, we want to make sure that if this project does move forward, that we're not exposing our seniors to high levels of nitrate. So
Right,
what's
right.
the plan to mitigate that?
Really valid question. And there's kind of two ways to look at this contamination issue. One is, is the groundwater contaminated, and is there any way for that contamination to reach the surface and affect somebody by drinking the water or being exposed to it? And then there's what's happening at the surface in the soils. So we have had, well, for this project, I guess this would be my opinion, is that there is no exposure for future residents of the site to whatever groundwater contamination may exist 50 feet or however far down the groundwater is. And I'm sorry, I can't give you that number right off the top of my head. And there will be no consumption of groundwater because the project will be connected to the city water system. So the water for the residents, for watering, for everything else that goes on the site will be drawn from an acceptably clean water source. Now, about the surface, the Housing Authority had what's known as a Phase 1 environmental site assessment prepared by a geologist or geological consulting firm. They're the ones that do these kinds of things. They evaluate the site to see whether there are any indications that there might be contamination of the soil. And then based on their observations and record searches that they do, including well records, well contamination, and so forth, they then advise their clients whether there are any problems that should be dealt with in terms of human health exposure. So that was done, and a range of things were identified in the initial, what I called the Phase 1 ESA, that included things like contamination from the former stockyard use, from use of of lead-based paint, of termiticides around the house, of use of, this is a new term to me, but it's insect killer that kills mites and ticks. So anybody in the livestock industry could probably tell me what that is, but I can't pronounce it. So, but all of those things were investigated. All of those were validated as possible contamination of the site. And so they recommended that what's called a Phase 2 site assessment be done, and that's one where soils on the site are collected and submitted to a laboratory for analysis. So they collected something like 20 soil samples on the site, 4 or 5 of them out in the vicinity of where the stockyard was, several around each of the buildings to see if there were any lead-based paint residues or anything else there. And then they sent all the samples to the lab, got the results back, and not one of the samples had a level of any contaminant that was in violation of any health standard. So the bottom line for that analysis was let me see if I got it handy. The site is considered acceptable for unrestricted uses, and no further evaluation is recommended. So that was the bottom line. And so it's been pretty thoroughly taken care of, pretty thoroughly investigated, and that's what we reported on in the initial study. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, it does.
Anything else, Mr.?
If I might, Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to come back after we hear some of the public comments and see if there are any other items that should be addressed for the record of the CEQA process. Okay. So, thank you.
Madam Chair, I think I have a case of ADHD because I thought of another question to ask the applicant.
Mr. Ragsdale?
No, the gentleman on the phone. Actually, I don't know if it's Mr. Ragsdale or the person on the phone. So this project is deed restricted for 55 years, seniors only. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so what happens at the 56th year?
Chris, you want me to tackle that?
Well, I just want to add something real quick, if I can, then Peter, I'll let you go. Remember, they're one-bedroom units and 4 two-bedroom units. So it'd be very rare, even if it went to market, which it probably won't, and I'll let Peter expand on that, you'd probably have single individuals that are senior. If there's a history of seniors, as we've seen, the site is built with seniors in mind. It tends to be that way, but I'll let Peter talk about maybe the re-syndication, the extension of the regulatory agreement, et cetera,
So I think the answer system-wide to your question is about affordable housing preservation. The state says you need to have 55-year affordability. If we were in a larger community, there are multifamily housing properties that fall out of this deed restriction, at which point they go to market, and rents go from an affordable rent to a market-based rent. So the reality is that preservation is also one of the reasons that affordable housing is so hard to find in California. That if we look at communities that built these projects many years ago, where those deed-restricted covenants fall out, the property can go to market. So without some intentionality of maintaining that affordability, in 55 years, that could happen.
If I may assist the council as well, in our municipal code, if there's going to be a change in use or change in occupancy, they would need to come back to the planning commission for approval at that time. So although, and I can't say what's going to happen in 55 years, but in 55 years, let's say the deed restrictions then fall off, or those restrictions fall off, and they wanted to go to market, it's most likely that they're going to have to come back to the planning commission to get approval to do that, to change the occupancy from the senior to whatever the rate of the market is.
Only reason I'm asking is I'm just wondering if any consideration, I understand 55 years is the deed restriction, but is any consideration given to make it deed restricted for perpetuity?
So, typically also that after 55 years, stick-built, apartment in California doesn't last forever. So, typically there's also an argument around recapitalizing the property and figuring out how to do that. So if you have an owner in 55 years, as you said, we can't figure out what's going to happen, but somebody says, hey, we'd like to buy this property, but in order to renovate it, put in new kitchens and bathrooms and those type of things, we have to raise rents. So there's a natural tension there. So that's what makes it challenging, but minimally for the investment of time and the conversation we're having tonight, that it serves its mission for a minimum of 55 years.
What's the rent going to be?
Mike, what would you like me to do?
Let me ask that. So what's the rent going to be?
Thank you.
Wait, I have two questions.
Sure.
So it's going to be the rent that is going to be charged, and then there's going to be the rent that the occupant pays. There's going to be a difference, correct?
Exactly right. So because of rental subsidy, the developer can figure out what the cash flow of the property will be. There's a tenant portion of the rent, and then the subsidy portion, at which point, I'm just going to use round numbers. Let's say the one-bedroom apartment is worth $800 a month that is financeable. So basically, the state of California says, we'd like to build this affordable housing for seniors in Escalon. We can apply based on its construction cost to finance it. The state does some arithmetic and says, we'll give you this much tax credit equity and we'll burden you with this size of a mortgage. The reason that there can be a mortgage is because the tenant pays no more than 30% of their income, and we know that there'll be financeable rent subsidy, at which point we can go to the bank and borrow money. So the tenant pays no more than 30% of their income for rent. So net-net, the project can serve, low-income people, if you take an average, up to 80% of AMI, all the way down to 30. So there's an average. So I'm saying you can serve people from a variety of incomes, but Tax credits don't allow households over 60% of AMI at admission. But people get an affordable rent because it is based on their individual household income. That's true affordability.
Social Security, $200-300 they're gonna pay?
Wait,
Until we open the public hearing for that. Unless you have that same question?
no.
So
I already did that one.
Okay.
I just have a comment. And I just really want to say thank you for taking the time to come here tonight. It's really important because in case you haven't noticed, we really care about our community. And I know that's the understatement of the year, but, you know, as a planning commissioner, we recognize that Escalon has a dire need for affordable senior housing. I mean, it is truly a problem. I mean, even in my own neighborhood, I have multi-generational families all around me because the seniors can't afford to live on their own. And, I mean, it's truly a problem. And so, thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And Mr. Stroman, I would say this, that I'm a transplant to California. I came from upstate New York, and I've done this my entire career. And I've made partners. You know, I can't help but be incredibly proud of the project we're doing with the county for homeless veterans. It's the first project in the county we want to serve this community. And I understand the concern about changes in Escalon. But, you know, I believe in this work. I believe that people of good conscience can talk through these challenging issues. I'm not saying, I'm not going to presume that we're going to agree, but what I'm appreciative of the honest conversation because, again, we can do the census, we can do the RENA numbers, we can do all of those things, but it's the personal stories and the personal relationships that people have in this community over affordable housing that I think that's why you also have some of these folks here tonight that you know, again, have concerns, but I think the affordability is undeniable.
Well, I mean, since you shared a personal story, I know, I'm sorry, I go off on these tangents and my fellow commissioners want give me the evil eye. But in my own personal family, I grew up in central Pennsylvania. And my grandmother, both of my grandmothers lived, my maternal grandmother lived till she was 98. My paternal grandmother lived till she was 83. And in central Pennsylvania, her winter heat bills were averaged between $1,200 and $1,400 a month, which is okay, but it's a big problem when you only make $900. So I truly believe, God rest her soul, I truly believe that my paternal grandmother starved herself to death because at the end of the day, all she could afford was saltines. But I appreciate everything that you're doing, and now comes the fun part.
All right.
Thank you.
I've got one more
Mr.
question for you.
Ragsdale, wait a minute.
Sorry. So I'm wondering, how does deferred maintenance work? How does that get funded? 20 years from now, the air conditioners need to be replaced?
It's a great question. So the initial financing period is 15 years. So from the date, it's without getting super technical, when the project's placed in service, we have a 15-year period with our limited partner, our equity partner. So there are replacement reserves funded out of cash flow, so at which point it is incredibly prescriptive. So those people that put their money into these projects, I'm talking about private dollars, are saying, look, we need to be able to claim our tax credits. So they want an income-eligible person. That unit has to be 100% rentable, and it has to be in excellent condition. The banks don't lend money without making sure that we have trusted partners. So there are replacement reserves funded specifically for that purpose, both at closing, you know, in terms of completion, as well as funded through cash flow.
Thank you.
Last comment. I'm really sorry about your Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, they stink. Nothing new. People are mad about the Rams.
Thank you. Is there anybody else, either here or there, that an applicant or? And the reason I ask, I did say we'd have a break at 8 o'clock. This would be an ideal time to take a little bit of a break and then come back and open the public hearing.
Sounds good.
Okay? So what, do I adjourn or pause, or what do I?
Adjourn to a 5-minute break.
There you go. Just say how long you want to adjourn for and the time that we'll be restarting.
Okay, let's adjourn for just 10 minutes, And then we'll resume with the public hearing on this issue. Need somebody to show me the.
finish telling you the story.
Folks, would you mind sitting down?
If you could take your seats, we can resume.
Hey, Al.
Or I think we're missing a few people.
Al. Larissa. 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 Larissa.
Yours.
Are we missing anybody? Seems like there are some empty seats, but we'll start without them? Okay. Let's resume the meeting. Any other applicants here that we haven't heard yet? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing, and people, if you could step up again, give your name and your address. 5-minute limit, yeah. If you want to step up again, yes, now's your time.
I live off California Street.
Your name, please?
Donald Bennett. I live at 444 California Street. My house backs up to that open lot adjacent to 120. And I don't think you give a size 8 foot would be high enough for a wall, sound wall, next to that railroad track. Our preference has already been set, I thought, that over there by P&L, that wall that's backed up to those houses that divides P&L and those homeowners there. And that's about 10 feet, I think. Another thing is, traffic starts about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I hear it. On a 3-day weekend, you can't get out on that road. On Brennan and 120, I know there's been a motorcycle cop killed there and another person killed there. Bad. It should have been a light somewhere along there to stop that traffic, because sometimes it's backed up 2, 3, 4, 5 cars on Brennan trying to just get out there. Other thing is, behind me is an open lot, open acreage, and I understand they're going to be building there. And we have enough traffic coming down California. Everything that comes off Main Street, Main Street, comes across through our homes to get to 120. They either go out Brennan or Earn or Walnut. So everything goes right by my house, both ways. And if the traffic's bad at 4 o'clock when they're coming home, and there's a train on the track, and he's stopped on the track to let Amtrak go through, because they're supposed to have the right-of-way. They're backed up 5 to 10 miles sometimes, I guess. I can't see the end of it. So what they do, they pass on the right and then turn on Brennan. Then they go up California or they go up Main Street. And it's just traffic, more and more traffic. When I moved here 18 years ago, when we bought our home, made us sign a letter stating that we wouldn't, whatever you want to call it, press charges because of the traffic. We didn't know about it. But, I mean, this place has grown.
Mr. Bennett, what's your street address again?
444.
What street? California?
California.
Okay.
So I think it should be a higher wall, really, because I could lay in bed at night and the train's coming down the track over there by the, in town. It vibrates my bed. And the track that runs down on 120, they come through there, backing up in through there at 11 o'clock at night. And because Brennan has an arm that goes down, they have to blow their horn to let them know that they're coming through it. So, you know, and they're going to be set right next to that track if they build those homes there, or those condos, or whatever you want to call them. That's all.
Thank you. Someone else like to speak on this issue? Name and address, please.
Hello, I am Amy Roten, and I live at 716 California Street, which is literally my house, a fence, and the field. And that's literally affects us right there. So I just kind of wanted to share, well, first of all, this is a tough thing. It is, because my heart goes out for the seniors. It personally affects me in my life as well, too. But my problem is that I feel like whoever wrote this letter was misleading by omission, because nothing in this letter tells us that it was Section 8 at all. This was meant to sell us on it and make us believe that this was just an awesome thing and it could possibly make our property go up. And that's what I'm upset about, is because this letter, and nowhere on here, there's not, and I have literally read this letter like 6 times to make sure that I was correct. Nothing on here talks about Section 8, and nothing on here tells you, hey, if you're wondering about anything else on this website, there's no link, there's nothing. It talks about the link on how you can watch the video, or watch today for this meeting and other information, but nothing about that. My problem is that we've been in Escalon for about 15 years, and I bought our house about 7 years ago, and we're part of the community. I actually teach basic obedience through the Parks and Rec. I teach dogs over at Main Street Park, and seeing everybody here, this is our little community. This makes me so proud to see everybody here like this, because we love our town. And I know that you guys give us the opportunity to come up here and speak, and I really hope it doesn't go on deaf ears. I did also notice that my husband had sent in, and I'm sure many of you know my husband. He's actually been known on Facebook as that Roten character all of a sudden. But he wrote something, and I know he sent it in, and I promised him that I would read this so that his voice could be heard, because unfortunately he works in Arizona currently, and he had to get on a plane and go to work. So I will definitely be speaking to him as well. However, my biggest concern is my equity in my home. That's what I'm concerned about. And what bothers me is that you guys talk about bocce ball courts in here and all this wonderful stuff, but once again, reiterating, nothing has said about Section 8. That's a problem, because I work my butt off to get this house. I pay my taxes, we pay our business license in town, we're part of the community, anything going on, park feet, all that, we're always there. This makes me upset, because now I feel like I'm in between a rock and a hard place. I don't know what to do. Do I sell? Do I stay? If I sell, I have to tell whoever's buying the house. I've talked to 3 different realtors about the situation, local realtors. Realtors been doing this for 32 years, told them the situation, talked about cottage over there and what that looks like in Manteca. People's houses are being affected. Their property's being affected. So with that, I don't want to take up too much time, because we got a lot of people that want to talk. But this is from my husband. He said, my name is Ryan Roten. I live at 716 California Street, right next to the proposed Section 8 project. My wife and I are small business owners here in town. We have done everything the right way. We have business licenses, we pay our taxes, and we participate in the community. And now we're being told that our neighborhood is going to drastically change, and in my opinion, for the worse. And the city wasn't even honest about it. The notice that we got in the mail was intentionally misleading to the residents of Escalon that this would affect most, especially it was only sent 300 feet out. So it mentioned a bocce ball court, but somehow left out the part of it being Section 8. It left out the traffic impact that it would have, because we all know, as you've heard before, everybody living in that area, the traffic right there is terrible. That 4-way stop is awful. So, or excuse me, it's not even a stop, but it left out the entrance into the project is right next to our house. That is where everybody will be going in and out. So now, whether or not the city has any power over this project doesn't dictate how the city tells its residents. And you did it in a deceptive way. You lied by omission, and the website with all the details of the project is not even on the notice. You were hoping that we would just blindly trust what you told us, and we will not. The city will have no power on who moves in, and we all know that with low-income housing can also come crime and bad element. The county will be in charge of the whole thing, and the last thing I want to do is bet my home equity and my neighborhood on the judgment of the county. Would any of you bet your home equity on it? Would you be willing to live in a neighborhood that turned bad because of poor decisions or so-called leaders? Because of the misleading letter that you sent out, why would we believe anything that you say about the project? If you want to guarantee me in writing that nothing will change for the worse, then I might be on board. Can you do that? Or will you personally cover any loss of my equity or any property damage caused or any harm that might come to me and my family? or any harm that might come to my neighborhood. The fact that we have no say in this is infuriating. How many of you live in the neighborhood? Anyone, the low-income seniors that you guys can't even define, but now we know is officially 62, when previously it was 55 or 62. We will have family that come and visit. So who knows what kind of element from Stockton, Modesto, Manteca, or anywhere else in the county will be driving in and out right next to our house. Now the argument can be made that I'm speculating, and my response to that is that you are too. Either way, I will be the one that has to deal with it, and I'm not willing to risk it. You are gambling my neighborhood, you are gambling my equity, and you are gambling with my family's safety, and I'm not going to sit quietly while you do it. So that is how we feel about this, and we also, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the gentleman that was just up here, he said in 15 years, there's not.
Ms. Roten,
Oh, yes.
it's time.
Oh, okay, well, that's all right. Thank you.
My name is Andy Dugo. I live at 1759 Gwendolyn Street, which is a few blocks away from there. Been a resident of Escalon for 70 years. I wouldn't qualify because I make too much money, I guess. But my concerns are, if this was for the city of Escalon, I think it would, I'd jump up and I'd probably help out, do whatever I could. I've served the community and the fire department for 25 years in various capacities. But this is for the county. This is for low-income county residents. We don't have a choice of who gets in there. That really, really does concern me. I'm old enough to know when it was a stockyard and we heard the cows mooing and all that, which, you know, when I live right next to the cannery, I hear the whistle blowing, the sound of the trains is part of our town. You kind of come to embrace it because that's where you live. That's why we like it. The idea that we don't have enough houses in this community is basically because we love being a small town. They have saw fit to limit the number of building permits that are allowed. Maybe that's what drives houses up, but that's what makes our community what it is. So I would hate to see low-income Section 8 housing where we don't have control. I don't say control. We don't have any say-so in who gets to go in there. And if they're going to say the low income is a percentage of the medium income, my goodness, they're going to be almost homeless to get there. So the idea about the traffic, I don't, it's terrible because I got grandkids that go to school over at El Portal. You can't get across to get out on the highway. On Sunday when I go to church, it takes 4 cars ahead of you to get through there. So I'm very concerned. I didn't personally get the letter about the application, but after looking at it, it did look kind of devious. It looked like a government letter. So I know you'll make the right decision. I know you're in a tough spot. If you say no to affordable housing, it makes you look like you're self-serving. But I know there's a need for it, but I just don't think this is the way to do it. I really don't. So thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Dugo.
Al Ballinger, 719 California Street. Almost everything has been said that I had planned on the phone, so I don't have to pull my phone out and talk about it. But I also have lived at the same house for the last 50 years. I do remember when the auction yard was going full tilt, when it used to be on one Saturday a month. And we used to get cows to get out, had the cowboys come down the street. That was entertaining for us. Then when McGill bought the place, he had it every Saturday. Then it came every Wednesday and every Saturday. So it became a nuisance because they bring in the feed for the animals, and we got rats. At the present time, if you stand any length of time on the corner of Irwin and California, looking at that old house, you either see raccoons coming out of there or feral cats. Both of them come out. They both live in there. The raccoons sometimes make it over to my house because I have a water fountain. They like to wash themselves up. But I'm mainly concerned, like I said, I've lived there 50 years. There was, and I'm almost sure it's still there, an irrigation ditch that runs right across where Amy's going towards 120. That's still there. That's an irrigation ditch. It's still alive because there's 2 houses down on Fisk. They can't close anything off because it's an active irrigation ditch. The only thing they did back then was lower the hump, where the kids used to come over, see how far they could jump their cars. And I've seen that too. But I can sit in my chair in my living room. We have a bay window. I look out there. Irwin, almost any time from First Street to 120 is a drag strip. The street is not wide enough. They are going through, they never slow down for California Street. I'm telling you, I've watched people, I've done it myself, look up there, there's no cars coming, start to make a turn, and here comes somebody just flying by. And I'm not talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old people. I'm talking adults. They drive that way. And my concern is the traffic and is the property that they're going to build on this. That's been an auction yard for over 50 years. When they closed it down in 1993, I seen a map of a senior housing for Escalon residents. It was supposed to have been built between a little after 1993. Now this is 2022. I don't know what happened to them plans from then till now, but I'm telling you, we have to be concerned about our seniors in Escalon, because we have a lot of, we have maybe close to 90 that are waiting to get into Heritage House. We could help them if we stay here in the community. And I know Stockton, I know the government, they're saying, no, it's our money, we'll tell you what to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Frank Rodriguez. I live at 1731 Sanchez Way, and I don't like this project one bit at all. I don't see us paying for the rest of the county stuff. I don't know what's going to come in. I'm really scared about all this stuff. The traffic is bad as they say it was. I've been here 3 generations. It took me 2.5 years to actually get a house. 6 houses where I was born, or where my parents had built. I'm 79. I was a Marine. I worked at Franzia Winery. I worked closely over here. I've been an assistant coach, through all the sports. I've helped out. I've been a yard duty teacher for my son at school. I don't mind helping other people from our community. In fact, with my disability, I have my son mow 2 older people's homes right next to us, and one over on Rosita from an old 80-year-old man. He goes on the side, it's the right thing to do. Don't take no money. He'll go and do that. But to have homes from people from other communities, no, I don't see that. We're just importing poverty and crime and riffraff, and I don't see anything positive coming from this. I would rather see duplexes or an Escalon community just for Escalon. Anyhow, that's what I need to say. Oh, I got another question too. Whoever's building this, do they have a project like this in their house? And what is the actual cost per building? I have no idea. If Manteca needs to have the waiting list, I think it should go to Manteca. They're a complete different community than we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cody Blevins, 806 Rosina. One of the things I wanted to kind of bring up on this map, Rosina is going to have an emergency exit only. Is that what it sounds like is what is being proposed, correct? So I've actually had to go out there personally and go out and fix the original fence that's been in there. And neighbors can contest to this. We had some riffraff coming through there because of, we only have one egress site, which is through Rosina up to Oklahoma. And anytime that fence got opened up, we started getting riffraff through there. And I'm saying like people breaking into the cars, stealing trucks, trying to get in the houses, so on and so forth, right? So my biggest concern is, even if this is an emergency use only, right? What bothers me is there a way to maybe, at minimum, right, do an actual full gate, not an actual, just a barricade with a swinging arm, right? That's a concern I have. I'm pretty sure a few of my neighbors would agree. Second of all is, Our street is super famous for having massive floods during rains. We have the most worst drainage system at the end of our street. The water will literally come up to my house when it starts pouring down. Now, my concern is that we're talking about adding into existing sewer, existing water, existing power. Now, when we're adding this in, and we already have a really bad maintained street for flooding, how is that going to affect us? Is that going to make it so that we're backed up even more? That's one big question. 2, electricity. We used to have rolling brownouts quite a bit in the area. Obviously, with solar being put in, it's actually alleviated some of that. How is that going to affect us once we add 48 more units, air conditioners, so on and so forth? And I'm assuming there's going to be an EV charger at some point as well, because most of these new communities require green technology, that's EV chargers. Are they going to be substituted with solar batteries, so on and so forth, to help subsidize the actual electrical grid that's feeding our community? Last is water. We get a major sand problem down our streets. Are we tapping into our water? Are we tapping another water? And then obviously with the wells, is the wells going to be sufficient to feed this another community? Because we don't have sufficient water pressure. I don't know about you, any of my neighbors. I don't really have sufficient water pressure. So if we start tapping into the same well, there goes our water pressure even more. So that was my take on all this. I think doing a single-story senior housing, I don't think that's a problem for me. I think having it a possible opening, getting riffraff in there, regardless if it's senior, low income. As a contractor, I've seen a lot of people dive in, especially with these dual room units, where people are not supposed to live in there because they're supposed to be on the lease. They come in, regardless if the management company's great or not. They don't pay attention to that. They don't really care too much if, grandkids are staying for extended or children are staying for extended. So we will start getting riffraff in there. And last point is somebody else made is what our houses are worth, right? Escalon is really high on home values. What is that going to look like in 3 years when this gets built? Is our home values going to start dropping? I've worked really hard in my neighborhood. You guys have known me for coming in here because of other issues. I'm glad that I've worked on my house. Is it going to ruin all the property values in the area because of low income?
You're at the corner of Rosina and Fur?
Yes, ma'am, the big flagpole,
How many houses are to the west of you?
It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 houses. 3 houses. Being told 3.
Okay.
I took it from the audience.
Mr. Blevins?
Yes, sir.
So if you read our report, the gate that's on Rosina is locked, and it's controlled with a Knox box, and only the fire department has a key to that box.
So that is it actual fence, or is it like just like you see it, say up in the hills where it's a single, just one bar that keeps somebody from driving through?
I can't answer that. That's a question.
Yeah, so that's what it comes down to. We don't want people to really physically walk through, because once they see they can get through it, they were going through small holes in the fence, right?
So you want to make sure it's not a Forest Road barricade as opposed to a
Yeah, it needs to actually be a
gate.
real fence. Yeah.
Okay.
That's for me. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
My name is Joe Belcher. I live at 722 Rosina. So for those of you who don't know, Rosina is a street that there's a white area, and so I back up onto this new property. I have specific questions. I don't know if maybe staff or the commission can answer them. Mr. Stroman brought up the wall. So I back up there. I have a pool. Is there a way you can put a stipulation that they have to put in a cement wall between the existing houses and the new development? I have no desire to have my daughters be looked at by people through my fence. I don't know if that's something you can discuss, or if
You've already got a fence there?
I have a fence, but you can see through fences. So, and then my other is specific about the plans. I'm trying to figure out why the parking is against the existing houses, why the traffic is being pushed against our yards rather than the 8-foot wall that will be on 120 side. Why isn't the parking along the noisy side? So I don't know if that's something that the commission can put, or the staff can put stipulations on the plans changing for that. So mine are specific questions. I do want to thank them for being here. I know they're not getting a lot of love, and low-income housing is important, and I don't personally have a problem with the low income and the seniors, but I have more specific questions on the actual site plans. So
Hello, my name's Elsa Sandoval. I've lived in Escalon for 42 years, or specifically my family has. I came home to roost again 20 years ago from the Middle East. I live at 1724 Sanchez Way. I'm going to come at this from a different angle. Other than my time with the DOD, I worked in social services out at Empire. So I'm going to address some of the Section 8 questions. No, Escalon will have no input into who goes in there under Section 8. No, Escalon seniors will not have priority to get into that housing. That is strictly based on income, long-term on that list, and a variety of other priorities. If you're a senior to begin in Escalon, even if you're tight on money, you probably have better resources than the rest of those people in the county on that list. You will not be Escalon people in that facility. I watched Empire be destroyed by this kind of program. When I worked social services, it was my job to help them get into Empire. That was my job, 20 years. In the 90s, and they asked me to come back because I was good at my job. They built housing, which in Empire we came to call Ghetto A and Ghetto B. It was built for seniors. However, the seniors, they didn't have enough seniors to fill it. So the loopholes in Section 8 allowed them to change it to anyone that qualified for Section 8. The seniors were eventually pushed out of those so-called Section 8 for seniors, and it became Ghetto A and Ghetto B. By the time in the early 2000s, when I went back the second time to work for Empire, when they asked me to come back and do my job again, those communities had been destroyed. Crime was up. They couldn't afford to keep up their own little police force. They had handed that over to the sheriff's department, which grew in crime because the sheriff's department from Stanislaus County could not get out there in time to deal with anything. Empire became the Central Valley home #1 producers of meth. You can look that up. That's what Empire became. Now, I realize Empire is not the same size as Escalon, et cetera. I also know, as a long-term person who's lived in the valley, that Empire was just a sleepy farm community, much smaller than Escalon, although probably not smaller than when I moved here, and it was only 1,500 people. And it became nothing more than poverty and crime. When they asked me the second time to come back, it was to manage a $6 million grant program to try to bring law back in, to try to do something to change the community and save it. It was unsavable. I had to leave the profession because my car was attacked. I was held hostage by one of the so-called people I was supposed to be helping because the husband was doing a methamphetamine. It was on the news. My family demanded that I switch professions. I'd done my part to serve lower-income communities. I do not speak because I have the privilege of being wealthy and living in Escalon. I come from East Central LA. I moved to Escalon when I was in high school. My father, a Marine, decided that he could not stand the idea that sooner or later in East Central LA, there was a fight I could not win, and he didn't want to be there to pick up the pieces. So he found the smallest town in California he could live in, Escalon, okay? And we have lived on Sanchez Way since. I have watched these communities that we have worked with, Empire's not my only limitations, I've worked at Patterson and other ones, be destroyed by these kind of programs. And the fact that they were not honest when they brought this here tells you right there that they're hiding all those regulations that I had to deal with all those years, all the loopholes that will bring back in the Escalon. It will not serve the seniors of Escalon. You'll be lucky. I don't care how much you market to them. I don't care how much they apply for it. There is a priority system, and most Escalon seniors will not qualify. So I'm not talking to you as, gee, I live on Sanchez Way, my property values will go down. I'm sure it will. I'm not happy about that either. Traffic will increase. I know all that. I'm talking to you from experience, working in the programs that serves this kind of program and what will happen to Escalon. Look at Empire, 10 years from now. That's Escalon.
Thank you, Elsa.
Thank you, Elsa.
Hi, I'm Cody Fowler, 1550 Judith Way. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I think most of the bases were covered. You guys obviously got my email. She pretty much confirmed all that. And I can certainly second what she said about Empire. I was a field tech for AT&T for many years and up until a few years ago. And Empire, unfortunately, was my turf. So I'm intimately familiar with it, and there is nothing good in Empire anymore. In any case, you guys got my email. I think everybody here's covering everything, but I certainly want to say that as far as planning is concerned, the Planning Commission, I certainly think it's your job to plan. And what I want to see you guys do is plan for the seniors that are here in Escalon. We need to get them some help, obviously, at places to live when they are on fixed income and so forth, and I get that. But you guys need to plan it for Escalon. I don't think we need this county organization that reports to the state, that reports to Housing and Urban Development, having their business in here. If the county wants to build a senior housing project for Section 8, there's plenty of land out here outside the city limits that they have jurisdiction over. I don't want you to let them in here to do the damage that they've done in other places. So my vote's no, and I would highly encourage you guys to not approve this project in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Mr. Fowler, what was your street address?
1550 Judith.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name's Jeremy Johnson. I live 1755 Sanchez Way. And I just have a couple concerns regarding this meeting is happening tonight, and I had written that the Super Bowl just happened and Valentine's Day. But across town, there's a school board meeting where they're talking about kids and masks, and that's an important meeting also, and I hope they're doing really good over there. But this is an important meeting over here too. And to hear all these folks, and like Andy Dugo, I've known him almost my whole life, and I look up to him, he's like a father, So other folks that live in Escalon, this great city, need to be hearing that stuff also, And I don't know how long this meeting has been planned, or that one, but why they're on the same evening, at the same time, that kind of concerns me a little bit. And I'm not really for this also, by the way. But I thought I would just come up and, transparency is a strong word, and I think we're being told to be transparent, but we need to turn that around and have everyone else, government and bosses and big tech, be transparent as well, Don't just ask for it to happen. Let's everyone be transparent about what's going on. Also, I'm not real sure what happened with Paddock Village over there. I know rent was real cheap. So I know that it was privately held, privately owned. I know one of the owners, or I knew one of the owners, but I know that was helping out some senior citizens in our city. But at the same time, it was privately sold on the open market, and like he just said, you're the planning commission, and the city of Escalon should have been doing something to help out our senior citizens, That was sold and their rent doubled. That's not cool. Like everyone's saying on the phone or whatever, he's saying, oh, we're going to help you out. It's like, what the heck? Why didn't we help those folks out? Why are we doing this? And I agree. There's plenty of land out there. I work in Stockton. There's plenty of land out there. Let's build another big one out there. I'll help. I don't care. It's not a good idea here in town. Just being honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremy, are you aware of the schedule that the planning commission meets?
You know what? I'm nervous as heck all right now.
Calm down, dude. We're just like you. It's okay.
I get it. I know you guys are all.
So that
You guys
just
are great.
so just for your information, the planning commission meets the second Tuesday of every month.
After the first.
So let's,
council meeting.
you know, everything's changing. Everything's changing in the world, right? COVID.
If you want to, okay, so if you want us to change, then you need to bring that up to city council.
Like I said, I'm new to this. You know, some of you aren't. Let's get it changed to where, because this is important. This is the city of Escalon. I'm 44. My grandparents built a home here. My grandpa went to high school, one of the first students. My mom was born. It's no longer a hospital right there in the middle of town. So, yeah, this is not a good idea.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anybody else?
Don't forget to go online if you don't have anyone else.
Okay.
Debbie Harris, 1738 Alicante Court. We have 5 generations in my family that have been in Escalon. In fact, I was born at that hospital here in Escalon. It now was just like a residential place. Anyway, one of the things about living in Escalon is we take care of the people. We take care of our elders and anything to do with schools, or we support all our stores, or just anything that needs to be done. And I think we owe our elders, like my father, he's 90 years old, and there's no place that he can go. I mean, luckily he can afford where he lives right now. But it just seems like if we're going to do anything to do with senior living, which we really need to do, is we need to concentrate on how we can take care of just our seniors, just like everybody else has mentioned here tonight. And so I think that is, if you would ask anybody in town, because this has been a really big thing. I mean, people are buzzing and talking about this whole situation, talking about, the way that they informed the people that it was just 300, feet from their houses. And I haven't talked to anybody that says, this is like a really good idea. And as elected officials, appointed officials, our city council, I think that you owe the people of Escalon, what it is that's going to help us. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Debbie. Is there anybody, okay, go ahead.
All right. My name is Philip Kimball. I live on 713 Rosina Street, which is right there right at the end. I'm 26 years old. I was born and raised in this town, and I just bought that house a year ago. And the stuff, I work in Stockton, and I come home every day, and that street, what goes on in that street with the kids and everything is awesome. I was born and raised in a town over behind the old Chevy department, and it was similar to that, and it kind of went away. And moving into here and seeing that just reminded me of my childhood. It was a reason why I wanted to live in Escalon. And I suffered 4 years living with my parents just to buy a house here for a reason. So I want to say, though, it's a beautiful town. That the short notice thing is kind of tricky, but there's people in this town that love this town, and it would be awful to see cross-traffic in there and those kids not be able to do that because safety is concerned. All right? That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody that is on Zoom or watching at home that would like to weigh in?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, who is this, please?
Joanna DeWitt. I live at 1308 Fur Court.
Go ahead, Joanna.
I just want to say that I have lived in this community my entire life, in the same neighborhood, actually. And the lack of information that came on the letter, because I actually got one, is just unfortunate. Nowhere in this letter does it say affordable. It just says senior housing. I'm worried about my property value along with everybody else. I'm worried about riffraff with everybody else. I'm worried about the sewer infrastructure with everybody else. That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else here or watching at home?
Chris Swanson, 132 Henry Road. Have a business here in town also. My concerns are the infrastructure, all of the water habits that some of these people have talked about, the drainage, those kind of issues. And why has the city not looked at, over the last 20 years, the senior housing proposal that have been inputted from other people other than the county? Does the city benefit more financially by the county coming in than a private investor?
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Mr. Simpson?
Stand aside for anybody else.
Okay, is there anybody else? Otherwise, he'll come up and address some of the questions that have been asked.
I also would like to ask Chris, whatever his name was, that was remote. Is he still here?
Chris Flaherty?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty? No, he's not on anymore.
Oh, okay.
What was your question, though?
My question was, how often at these places where people have to be approved, are they going to do inspections to say that their visitors are staying? So how often is the property management company going to come in and say, no, you can't be here?
Yeah, maybe the county representative could help.
Certainly will try. There are 2 inspections of each unit every year. There's a lease that requires that there can be no guests longer than 14 days.
Sure. And also, I've worked for a property management company, and I know that you turn a blind eye, and the riffraff comes in and that blind eye, and all of a sudden you've got 2 kids with their kids living with them. How is that going to be monitored? County, I'm sure. I know.
I don't think that was a question. So.
No, that was definitely a question.
Folks, I'm happy to try and participate honestly. You asked me a question. I told you that, we inspect. This is a private company. There's a resident manager that lives on the property. The units are statutory to be inspected twice a year, including an inspection by a private investor. And secondly, folks sign a lease with us. Most people that really need this housing and need the affordability, if they don't honor the commitments they make, and they lose, they're evicted, they lose access to rental supports for forever. So there's some skin in the game by people that also live in this community. So, I can't promise, I'm not standing up in this community and promising everyone perfection. I'm just giving you an honest answer to the question.
I also have another question about the center block wall that will be built.
Go ahead.
8 foot, really?
That's pretty standard.
Just saying. How about those residents that are backed up on Rosina, whose homes are backed up on Rosina? Is that 8 foot standard? And is that going to be a center block wall?
In accordance with the Escalon Municipal Code, The requirement for an 8-foot masonry wall is only required when two different zoning uses are next to each other. An example would be commercial coming in towards residential or residential moving in towards commercial. Because Rosina is considered residential, there is no requirement in the municipal code.
Of course, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but wouldn't that be residential interfering with residential from 1 to 4 units?
It's still a residential project.
So you're saying that the people on Rosina, whose homes, and also my friends, the Rootens, would have just a wood fence, so they are not going to have a center block wall?
If they're a residential use, a masonry wall is not required in accordance with the municipal code.
It should be.
And the municipal code also specifically requires 8-foot masonry. So anything above that.
So the man who spoke earlier about his pool in the backyard, wondering about his children being looked at through a wood fence, expansion in the wood fence, so he has to worry about people looking at his kids. Because there's not going to be a center block wall there, correct?
Except that when you look at the site plan, the driveway that goes through the property is on the other side of his wooden fence, and there's landscaping on this,
That's ridiculous.
on that side.
Sorry.
What was that?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Simpson, was there something you wanted to address?
I wanted to ask the question of the Housing Authority.
Oh, Mr. Ragsdale?
Yeah.
We need to finish with the public first. Sorry, Commissioner.
Oh, well, he was talking, he came up again, and I wanted to respond, ask him another question.
Okay.
So you mentioned 14 days. Is that in a calendar year, or is that 14 consecutive days?
It is 14 days for the calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Elizabeth Bennett, and I live at 444 California Street. And about the 8-foot wall, if you have two properties that are level and you have an 8-foot wall, is different than we have on 120, because we have a railroad track that's about 2 feet higher and a highway that's about 2 feet higher than our property lot. So that actually makes it a 6-foot wall, not an 8-foot wall. So I think they need to take consideration in the level of the properties for 8-foot or 10-foot or 12-foot wall.
Thank you. Are we ready for Mr. Simpson? Oh, I see a hand. Is that you, Elsa?
Yes, that's me.
Come to the microphone so we can hear you.
Hear me. But property management, California tenant laws, landlord rights, etc. According to property management, you cannot enter a facility, an apartment or a house, etc., without 72-hour notice to the tenant. I'll give you 3 guesses what happens during those 72 hours when they know when you're going to show up. You are not allowed to search the property. Gee, are there grandkid toys there? Are there somebody else's clothes there? Is there anything? You can't ask those questions. All you can do is physically enter, say, "Hi, Johnny Smith." That's it. That's it. That's all you can do. You cannot ask, "Why is it that it looks like you're sleeping in the living room and there's women's clothing or children's toys in the bedroom?" You can't ask that. And you cannot evict someone even if you suspect that that's the situation. In the state of California, you have to have grounds. And those grounds have become very, very strict. Yes, it can violate a lease. Good luck fighting that in court. By the time you get them out of there, if you're lucky to get them out of there, it'll take you months and cost you lots of money. And Section 8 has lots of lawyers to fight you. Good luck.
Thank you. You want to try, Mr. Simpson?
And they're not even our residents.
So just for the record, this is for the record too, and what I have to say. But there's no reason why you can't invite anybody else to speak after I do. I'm just here for a purpose, and that's to assist the city in completing the California Environmental Quality Act process. And so what you have before you is what we called the public review draft of the initial study, mitigated neg deck. And it's recommended that you adopt that. But one of the things that the commission needs to make a finding about is that you've considered all of the comments that were submitted on the document, and that would include any comments that were made here tonight at the public hearing. So there isn't much, I need to draw this, there isn't much to say about the environmental document in light of the comments that are being made here tonight, because the majority of them have to do with issues that aren't addressed under the California Environmental Quality Act. In fact, social and economic concerns are prohibited from being addressed in EIRs and things like that. So that's all in your purview to consider, and nothing that I have much, if anything, to say about. But there were a couple of things that were raised in the comments on the initial study that I'd like to address. One of those has to do with a question about the house that's on California Street as to whether it's historic or not. And it is most definitely of historic age. Anything over 45 years of age is potentially, or is considered of historic age. But the important point is whether or not it's of historic importance. There are a series of criteria that are applied at the state and federal level against which that can be judged by a qualified architectural historian. So we hired one of those to evaluate the house. And in fact, this is following an archaeological study of the site as well. But we hired the architectural historian to evaluate the house, and the results of that evaluation were negative. And that means that it was not considered a historically important building. It is definitely old, but not historically important. And that's all in the initial study, too. That historic resource evaluation is there, and all those points that were reviewed by the historian. And I think that everything else has been pretty much addressed. There were a couple of points raised by the police chief. He asked about Irwin and California being improved to city standards, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dominique and Diana, but the conditions of approval require the improvements of those streets to city standards. So that takes care of that question. And in terms of one of his questions was what is being done about safety at the 120 Irwin Avenue intersection, or I'm sorry, at the railroad crossing on Irwin. And that the answer to that is that everything that can be done has been done. It is a at-grade crossing, and until it's a grade separated, you have your cross arms, you have your pavement striping, you have your bells and audible warnings, and that's it. So it's equipped, and all three of the intersections on 120 are equipped the same way. So we talked earlier about the nitrate plume, which was one of his concerns. He asked also about lack of sidewalks on the streets, and those street improvements will include sidewalks. So anyway, I just wanted to hit on these points for the record. Hope they will show up in the minutes, and you are, I guess, fully advised as to what our thoughts are about the environmental impacts of the project. Can I answer any questions for you?
Any questions? No questions. No, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Mr. Bellinger?
Al Bellinger, 719 California Street. I only have one question. It will not involve me, but my neighbor it will, and all the people that live on Rosina. I just put a new fence around my house. I have 2 neighbors that had to pay 50% as a good neighbor fence. Other sections, I had to pay for it myself, which was okay because we got what we wanted. The people that are on Rosina have a fence now. Is this property going to be a good neighbor when something happens to their fence, to replace their fence? If they're not, why can't they put a cement wall, a brick wall or something? Because those fences that are on that property, most of them are aging, are ready to fall down. Too many more years, pretty soon, it's either going to go into the people on Rosina's yard or it's going to go into the new development. Who's going to pay for the new fence when it goes up? It should be the property owner and the new development. If they put up a block wall, that would be it for life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Mr. Ragsdale, is that anything that you can address, or have you heard any other concerns that you can address and haven't yet?
I don't think so. Again, I appreciate the time this evening. We want to be, an advocate for senior housing. I understand there are a number of concerns from neighbors and the community. I've done what I could to try and address them. I'm sure we have maybe answered some, but not all. So, whatever happens, we stand ready to be a good neighbor. And obviously, we remain supportive of helping seniors in Escalon. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
I live at 809 Rosina Street. My name's Jeremiah. I lived here most of my life, about 36 years. Went to school here. My mom was from here, second generation Escalonian. We love this town. We love what it stands for. We don't love Stockton, so we don't live there. We don't love Manteca, we don't live there. We've seen what's happened to that over the last 30 years, 40 years. It's trash. I'm sorry, but it's trash. We live here for a reason, because it's safe. It's a small knit community. And what's gonna happen once we build that? Then someone else is gonna come in here and build another one. Then another one. I'm sick and tired of this shit. Sorry my language. But everyone here is here for a reason. We live here because why? It's a small knit community, it's safe, and we're tired of people from other towns coming in here thinking they own the place. I've had riffraff come down my street. I've had the crazy people down the street that live there come talk to my kids. That's scary enough as it is. We've had homeless people walk in here before through our neighborhoods. Now it's gonna be even more. I guarantee it's gonna be more. I guarantee it's gonna be way more than it is now. In 10, 15 years from now. So guess what's gonna happen? All the good people that live here are gonna get tired of this shit and they're gonna fucking move away. Sorry for my language. Sorry for my language, but I don't like it. We're all gonna move away, sell our houses, we're gonna be gone. Do you want that? Do you want those people that are gonna come in here to be the new Escalonians? And all the good people that have been here their whole lives and their generation through generation through generation, we're just gonna back up. We're gonna find another Escalon somewhere else or another state. That's what's gonna happen. So think about that. Think about the impact that's gonna have on us 10, 20 years from now, on our kids, your grandkids. Is that what we want? Think about that, please. I'm sorry that I cuss, but it's emotional, and I care about this town, and I don't want to see it go to You know what?
Anybody else want to be heard on this issue?
Yes, if I could, please, Roxana Schatz on Zoom.
Go ahead.
Yes, this is Roxana Schatz at 1700 Riesling Way, Escalon. And all the concerns I agree with here tonight, but especially I want to reiterate the concern about the traffic going westbound on Highway 120 and making a left-hand turn onto Irwin Street. Sometimes you can wait over 5 minutes in that turn lane. All the time the traffic going westbound is passing you at 50 to 60 miles an hour sometimes. And I know that Caltrans doesn't want signal lights there based on the fact that they don't want to slow down traffic. But take that into consideration with the train crossing over 120. And sometimes you can have traffic backed up all the way to Brennan Avenue. So I would just like to see that really addressed. And I think that is about it. But the police department, if they sat there on the corner of Irwin, they could write tickets all day long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roxana.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else, either here or Zooming? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission.
Madam Chairperson, if I may.
Yes.
When I came to this meeting today, my first thought was that there is a lot of information that was given to us, over 600 pages, as we can see from the document. And before the meeting even started, my inclination was to ask for a continuance so that we had time to review the documents thoroughly. However, with the outpour of community support, I felt it was best to refrain from commenting to allow the community to speak their minds and be heard. Today, we are here to look at, from the Planning Commission's point of view, we are here to look at architecture and site. That's what we're here for today, and I respect all of your comments, and we've heard everything that you guys have said. Making that statement, I will refer back to my initial inclination, and that is to motion for a continuance on this matter. Because of the amount of information that was presented in the staff report, as well as information received from the public. So yeah, I would like to motion to continue this to the next Planning Commission meeting.
We want to wait that long?
I'm open to meeting sooner, but there were 600 pages of documents that I believe that we owe the residents of Escalon and do our due diligence to make sure that we've thoroughly gone through all of those documents before making any decisions.
What are the time factors related to this?
I'm sorry.
What are the time factors related to any decision that we make on this?
So the applicant is going to be submitting an application to the state on March 1st for the tax credits. So you're allowed to schedule a special meeting prior to then, if you want to. I mean, it's at Planning Commission discretion.
Does this go to City Council, or we make a decision and?
So, no, this is a decision, it's site and architectural review for this Planning Commission, and it is appealable to the City Council after that. There's a 10-day period if someone or some entity wanted to appeal it for some reason. So we should probably take those 10 days into effect as well, and back it up 10 days from March 1st, which doesn't give us really that much time at all.
Is March 1st a hard, fast deadline?
County, do we have?
Okay.
There you go. So you have a little time.
So if you do continue the meeting, you just need to make it a date certain. If it's sooner than our next planning commission meeting, which is scheduled for March, second Tuesday after the first Monday. So it'll be March 15th is the next regularly scheduled meeting. Then you would say that date. If you wanted it sooner, you would have to pick the date that you want it to be.
So, actually, I have a question, and you said that the applicant dropped off the call?
Yes.
Okay.
The
Another state, so I don't know if that.
the representative of one of the owners, so.
Okay. Well,
I mean, the county is here as a representative of the applicant as well. That was just another branch of the applicant.
well, as a planning commissioner, it's my duty to review this for site and architecture. And my questions are specifically related to site and architecture. And without the applicant being here to answer my questions, I would like to second the motion by.
In our evaluating, a lot of the information we've gotten tonight, some is pertinent to the site and architectural design, some is outside that focus. If we do review it and we have questions for the applicant, is there a way to get questions to him and get those responses to help in our evaluation?
Right, if you continue the meeting and as you're doing your review, you have questions, send them to staff. Staff will reach out to the various departments of the applicant to get answers. Back to you.
In order to listen to Mr. Ragsdale, do I have to open the public hearing again?
No, he's part of the applicant, so he's not the
Okay.
public. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Our architects are in the room if there's questions tonight. There's no incredible urgency, so I don't want to give people that, I agree that there should be, a full reflection on contemplating this project, but the architects are here tonight if you have questions.
So, these are just my thoughts, okay?
Okay.
I've been on the planning commission long enough to recognize this, but nothing drives Escalonians more crazy than having this forum and this basically be the first time where folks have heard about this. I understand that there are true dollars considered with this, but it may actually behoove us to review this further and have a little town hall session where everybody comes and the folks that are on the phone show up as well.
Sorry, just wanted to share the fact the architects are in the room if you had a specific question, that's all.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask my questions then of the architect.
Okay, thank you.
But my motion, or my second to your motion still stands.
Do we want to attach a date, a certain date to that?
I can agree with the date.
Can I ask my questions of the architect?
Okay,
Am I allowed?
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes, promise.
Who's the okay.
Hi, I'm Lars Kohlberg.
Hi, Lars. So, would there any consideration be given to a gated entrance into this community?
That would actually be up to the developer if that's something they see fit for the community. We, as the architect, would make that decision if that's something that, the housing authority or DFA wanted to achieve with the project, and we would certainly be able to do that.
Okay. Can you speak to what kind of gate is on the back side of the main entrance going off of Rosina?
Just based on how early the project is, obviously, it's in the site plan and the conceptual and schematic phases. We don't have specifics to type of fencing or anything like that comes later in the project. So that would be determined as you go through actual building permit.
Okay. Next question is related to the CMU block wall, but you just spoke to the gate and the fencing. I have a person, that's it for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Wait a minute, Lars.
In perusing this package, it looks like the community building sizes are different. They cite different sizes
For
throughout
the
report?
community building?
Yeah.
No, that, whatever's reflected on that site plan is accurate. So that would be the size of the community
Okay,
space.
so if I look at building plans
Right.
under A101, no, it's not that one. I wrote another one.
Here we go.
That's
it
right here.
No, look at A103,
That's it.
okay? It says proposed two-bedroom floor plan. Right above it,
That line's wrong.
That's a typo.
okay, so on G 101, 8, it gives me a community building size of 1,200, correct?
That's correct.
If I take the dimensions off of 103, I come up with something greater than 1,200 square feet.
So the actual community event space, or what you're looking at right here, that would not necessarily include restrooms or other
Well, it says
utilities.
community building, so I'm assuming, so I guess community building's not defined real clearly?
Yeah, that could be argued, yeah.
Okay. So, that's one of the items we're supposed to be addressing tonight?
I think, so the 1,200 is usually a minimum that we want to meet for the space for the tenants to have congregate.
Okay. So we are looking at what the minimum requirements are gonna be on this?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. 1,000 to 1,200 square feet is what we want to achieve for a community space.
I have no other questions.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, we have a motion for a continuance. We have a second. We do
Actually-
not yet have a date certain.
May I'm still within my 5 minutes, so can I ask staff a question, procedural question?
Go ahead.
So even though this is a proposed private development, there is a code enforcement question related to noise, related to whatever, as long as it's tied to code enforcement, do the same code enforcement rules apply to this development that apply to the rest of the city of Escalon?
Yes.
So if there were, I mean, because the way that the code enforcement works currently in Escalon is if there's a code complaint, an anonymous complaint is given, then that's investigated by the city. And just because this is a private development, that does not relieve them from anything. So I guess to our constituents, that if there's a concern about the property manager not performing their job, then there's also the route of submitting a code enforcement complaint. Is that a correct assumption, Mark, or what's your take on that?
Well, I'm a little confused what you're saying. If you're saying that there's a complaint about how they're running the facility, that's not code enforcement. But if there is a complaint concerning, a violation, a noise violation or something to that effect, maybe I don't understand your question.
Okay, so maybe I don't even understand the question. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, so complaints are made, the property manager, and the issue is not related to this specific development, but it's a violation of the California, or the Escalon Municipal Code. if the property manager, whatever the interpretation is they can submit an anonymous complaint to the city to investigate a code violation outside of the jurisdiction of the property manager.
You mean the property management itself, can the property management itself file a complaint? Sure.
No. So let's say that there's a major issue with noise. God forbid there's an issue with noise. And Amy is in her backyard and she tries to approach the property manager and property manager isn't doing anything, okay? The noise, so they're in clear violation of the Escalon noise ordinance. So the property manager is not doing their due diligence in their jurisdiction. Can Amy submit a code complaint to the city for a violation of the noise ordinance for that to be investigated?
Yes. I don't.
Actually, with all due respect, my question was for city staff.
Yeah.
And to further clarify, noise is in a different section, but yes, that can be enforced. But Chapter 8 of the Municipal Code is code enforcement, nuisance abatement. There's a list of nuisances that the city does code enforce. It would be just like a regular single-family house against another single-family house. You can complain about they don't maintain their yard. You can complain that they have broken-down vehicles. You can complain that they're parking on their grass. The same for this project. They don't have any sort of protections under code enforcement that it's the same applied to everybody.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Could I see the calendar on the screen again, please?
You want to see February or March?
Well, what if we do March 1st?
I can read that quick.
What?
I can read that quick. As long as that's okay with.
Jeremy, what do you think of March 1st?
As indicated, the regularly scheduled planning commission meeting is the March 15th.
Right.
My motion, yeah, if that's, should I include that in my motion?
Just add a date. Do you want to do the 15th, or do you want to do the 1st, or do you want to do?
I would motion for the 15th.
Okay, so.
Do I need to change the motion?
Yeah, just amend it to
Yeah.
include that date, sir.
Just add the date.
Okay. So I'd like to motion to continue this item to the March 15th Planning Commission meeting.
That was already done. You already indicated to the next regularly scheduled. The next regularly scheduled was March 15th. That was seconded. If you wanted to change it to something sooner, then you would need to amend it. And if you don't need to amend it, then you leave it, and when the question's called, it could be, you know, however you vote on it, and then there could be another motion if somebody wanted to do a different motion that way.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to.
Actually, I would like to withdraw my second and ask that we move that timeframe up just to 1 week prior to March 8th. Actually, so
it's a counter motion. You just make another motion to continue this to the date that you want, and then we have two motions, and we'll see if yours gets seconded or not.
actually, never mind. I'll just stay with my original second.
So the 15th is okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so is there any discussion on the motion, or should I call for a vote?
I've got a question for staff.
Go ahead.
And it's a procedural question, part for my understanding, but I think the audience as well. So I certainly would encourage the audience to attend any city council meeting on this matter as well. As a planning commission, I'm looking at page 11 of 16, you know, we're not voting on, there's been a lot of discussion on Section 8. We're not voting on whether this project can move forward based on that criteria. We've got in front of us on what we can approve, and these are just the way these meetings go. So we kind of wear two hats. We wear the community member, which, we have our feelings one way or the other of what this project would do, and our planning commission hat where we need to, go by these rules and vote on what's in front of us. So my procedural question would be, however we vote, let's say on the 15th, at that point, the applicant, let's say we vote no, the applicant can appeal it to the city council. Does the city council have the authority then to rule on this project going forward based on the Section 8 part of it, or are they bound by any type of criteria?
They're they're only allowed to review what you're allowed to review. So what gets appealed here, if it gets appealed, that's the only thing that they consider is what was spoken about today, what was put on the record today, what your findings were, because they're going to have to determine whether your findings were supported or not. But the answer to your question is no, Section 8 is not relevant to any of this discussion, and nor would it be for city council if it got appealed.
I would just recommend, hopefully it fills up again. It's very passionate. So please, as a community.
I would like to add something because I think there's some information that goes exactly to that and really would help the public understand that you mentioned city council. City council has been talking about their own senior affordable housing plan, not based on Section 8. And it's been discussed over the last year, at least 3 different city council meetings. They're the ones, even though this is planning commission, which one of the speakers mentioned, they've got a very limited role. It's the city council that really does that long-range planning, and they have been discussing it, and actually it went out for a request for proposal. We haven't gotten any responses, but the city had sent out a request for proposal to build senior housing, and the city is even considering donating some land to make that happen so they could focus on Escalonians and not Section 8. So there is something that everything that you all are talking about that I've heard today that the commission also seems to be interested in, and that is the city council is probably the better place for really what the focus is, what this planning commission can't address, the city council can, and there is something in the works on that. And I encourage, and I'm sure city council would too, encourage you to find information about that. You could even just search and go back to some of the previous city council meetings from last year, and you can see exactly what they've been discussing, so you can get your input on the next plan that our city council is actually trying to work on. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I still have another rant, and that's to all of you. We need you. As a planning commissioner, I've been on the planning commission for 6 years, and I will tell you that this is the most filled up planning commission that we've had in 6 years. As I explained to Jeremy, we meet the second Tuesday of every month following the first Monday. And most of the time, it's the 5 of us looking at each other. So please pay attention to the city website. I mean, honestly, I can tell you for certain that I don't care what else goes on in California, your voice matters in Escalon. And we need you just as much as, and some folks may disagree, you need us. So for the folks that have mentioned the issues about 120, we all know about it. And unfortunately, the 2 ladies to our right, your left, can only bark at Caltrans so much. I mean, they were constantly trying to get Caltrans. If we ever get to Commissioner Communications, one of the things I'm constantly bringing up is the shoddy job they did on 120. I think it's horrible. And I'm sure they're tired of hearing me bring it up. But the reason I do that is because I want it entered in the record. Our voice is just as important as your voice. We have been appointed by city council, but to make a difference, we need you guys to do the same thing. If you have problems, call Caltrans, call the state, call whoever, because that's the only way that we're going to truly make a difference.
And Councilmember, if I may, you were still with that second?
I'm still with that second.
And I believe you called the question, the vote?
Yes.
You call the vote?
I didn't call a vote yet, no, I just
Okay.
asked if there was a discussion on it.
Understand.
Now I'll call for a vote.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to continue the meeting until the 15th of March. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried, 5-0. We'll continue this on the 15th. Do we have anything else that night? Nothing yet?
Nothing planned for the next meeting yet.
Thank you all for coming. We've still got a little bit of news or business to carry on with, if you want to leave quietly.
Hey, Andy.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could be quiet on your way out so we could finish up here, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
And it goes until 11:30.
Okay, we'll move on to matters presented from the audience. Is there anyone here that would like to address a subject we haven't already addressed? We won't take any action, but we'd be glad to hear you. And
Can you repeat it one more time?
if anybody in the audience would like to address a matter that is not on the agenda, we won't take action tonight, but we'll be glad to hear you.
What's happening on the car property?
The car property, do we have any
57
update?
houses that are supposed to be built there. I think Flourishing's building there.
So an application has not been submitted yet. That property has been actually applied for annexation back in 2006-07, and it's been on hold for several years because the city currently has a moratorium on the sewer for any properties outside of city limits. That property at this time is outside of city limits. The city council passed a resolution about 15 months ago or so, 12 to 15 months ago, authorizing staff to move forward with completing a municipal services review, which is required to be provided by the city and go before the local agency formation committee, which is called LAFCO, to annex that property. And so we are in the last stages of completing that draft. We had to hire an outside consultant to complete the work. It's a very extensive document that's good for 5 years once it's adopted. And once that is reviewed by council, it would go to LAFCO for review and adoption. And if they did move forward with adopting the municipal services review, that property can move forward with annexation, applying to the city to be annexed. And then they would apply to LAFCO to be annexed as well. So it is a process. We're supposed to get the municipal services completed review probably in the next few weeks. It will probably be going to LAFCO in the next few months. And so once that's moving forward, we are trying to work with that potential applicant on consolidating things so that a process is handled at one time. It comes to the planning commission, it goes to council, it goes to LAFCO, and not having to continue to come back and forth for things. And so, and that has been discussed with the council as well. And so that's how we're moving forward at this time.
Okay, Liz, right?
Elizabeth, yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with an issue that, okay, we'll move on to staff communications.
Yes, I have a few communications. I did email all of you to advise of the Planning Commissioners Academy, which is being hosted by the League of California Cities. It's on March 16th through 18th. I know a few of you have indicated you were unable to attend. I don't have anybody attending at this point in time, so if anybody is interested, please let me know. And we can move forward with getting you scheduled. It is a great academy put on by the League, which is probably one of the best places, agencies to get that training from. So please let me know if you're interested in the next few days.
Is that Zoom or in person this time?
I believe this one is in person.
Yeah, it includes lodging. And
Yeah, because there is lodging, so it will be located in San Ramon.
They're doing a tour or something as well?
Doing what?
They're doing a tour of some...
Yeah, they try to put a multitude of different things in there to kind of expose people to different things, and where they have it is usually where they try to show a new project or something that's moved forward so that you can see where a planning commission once voted. So,
And I'd echo the city manager that the League of California City gives great trainings. I give pretty good trainings too, but they give great trainings.
Anything else from staff?
I have nothing.
No?
unless you have questions.
How about Commissioner Communications? Jeremy?
I have none this time. My 5 minutes were a long time ago.
I'm good tonight.
Steve?
Yeah, once upon a time, our street where I live, along with several others, was recently asphalted. And if I use the term shoddy workmanship, I'm exaggerating on the good side. I let a couple of councilmen know, and they said that that was going to be addressed. Are they going to be doing anything with that? Because on our street, the asphalt is not level, it's ridges. The gutters, the swash that goes down it of the tar that has marked it. The streets are already cracking on ours, and they just did this, last fall? I'm just wondering if that job is ever gonna get redone, or what's the results of that?
I can have the Public Works Superintendent contact you and have him discuss that with you and make a site visit and find out.
Because I heard that the city already filed a complaint with the contractor to come back and clean it up. We have not seen anybody on that street.
I'll have the Public Works Superintendent contact you. If there was anything like that that's dealing with the contractor, it would be the superintendent that's working with them. And so he will have a more clear answer because he's the one dealing with them directly.
I see that progress has been made with the Lear development. Do we have a completion date, or is everything going along well? No?
No date.
Oh, no, it's not going well, or
No
no?
date that we know.
Progress is being made. They are receiving inspections from our building department, but the owners have not indicated to us a completion date.
And what about Orlando's?
They are still going through the permitting process. It is moving, and they are still working with Caltrans on that driveway.
Was the item resolved as far as the wall on the western property edge?
I'm not quite sure. I haven't heard from the
It was
applicant.
misrecorded or something up at the county?
Oh, right. There was a disagreement with the property line. I haven't heard from the owner where they are on that.
Okay. Anything else? All right. It's, sure it is. It's 9:38, meeting adjourned. Thank you.